How's everybody doing? It's your boy Theo EJ Wilson. So I'm coming to you after an incredibly sad day of mass shootings has yet again gripped America and taken over the news cycle. And what seems to be the thing that's different about this set of mass shootings is that now it seems that the media is willing to call white supremacy terrorism. That's what it seems to be willing to do. This makes it kind of a turning point when you even have President Trump talking about, the possibility of there being at least some common sense, quote unquote, gun reform. That's all well and good. And I guess that's progress on the front if you really believe that this country doesn't have a big karmic stick coming towards it. Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, said that I tremble for this country when I remember that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. I remember that specifically. The first time I heard that was actually at the Million Man March. He said, I tremble for this country when I remember that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. And specifically, the context that Thomas Jefferson was talking about that in was in regards to industriousness in America. What Thomas Jefferson said was that a country rises and falls on how industrious it is. In other words, he was talking about a country's integrity and its basic strength of heart, its basic strength of character, meaning that it actually could not be, it actually could be the make or break factor of whether or not a country would indeed survive or not, right? He was concerned about the moral fiber. He was concerned about the moral character of the country. You know what I mean? What up, Victor? He said, bro, I live in old El Paso and it's very upset. Like I'm Hispanic and we're bonding. It's like I am a Hispanic and we are very bonding and nice. Word is born. You know what I'm saying? I have known Hispanic Chicano people to be the best among us. You know what I'm saying? I found so much common ground with Chicanos and Hispanic people and, being black. And, the part of my blood that I eventually found out was Afro-Latino made a lot of sense in due time. But what I think is prescient now is that these guys, specifically the Second Amendment people, the gun lobby, which is basically undergirded by the power of the NRA, is seeming to come under some real fire right now. They've got a lot of stuff that goes on that is far beyond the purview of what the NRA should have. You know what I mean? There's certain branches of science that can't even investigate, the causes of certain mass shooting outbreaks, the links between mental health and gun abuse. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't even investigate that because the power of that lobby is so extreme, man. But I got to call my Second Amendment people out on something real. I got to keep it real with y'all Second Amendment people, right? The main reason why people say they keep these high-powered rifles and they do the Second Amendment is because it is there in case the government goes tyrannical. And if the government goes tyrannical, then according to Thomas Jefferson, you're supposed to have all these guns that are willing to overturn, the government and make it for the people, by the people, and of the people once again. But the thing about it is that if you ask anybody in the black community, we'll tell you that the government been tyrannical. You know what I'm saying? The fact that we allow certain institutions to operate on black budgets means that is a source of tyranny. The fact that we allowed Ferguson to be locked down the way that it was in a state that was reminiscent of martial law means that this has actually been a tyrannical government situation. And we don't see y'all standing up to the government like that. You see what I'm saying? Also, something that has to be considered, and I think that this is a real thing, right? I'm starting to think that the folks who are advocating for the guns and the Second Amendments don't keep the guns for the government. In fact, the government really has a monopoly of force. Like back when the Second Amendment was written, everybody on both sides had guns. Everybody on the both sides had cannons, okay? Y'all ain't got what the government got. I don't care if you got like one of them big mounted machine guns. You don't got what the government got, okay? Y'all, none of y'all, I don't care how of an avid collector and arsenal you got, has a freaking Predator drone. None of y'all. Like you could try to retrofit your drone that you got from Wal-Mart, but it ain't the same. All right. None of y'all has F-16 fighters. None of you have aircraft carriers. The monopoly of force truly is on the government side. And though I heard a report today that said that there are in fact more assault rifles on the streets of America than there are in the hands of the military, yet and still there are still very much very much a powerful majority of the force of all the kind of weapons on the government. So you really likely couldn't really take down the government if you really was about that life. You see what I'm saying? So what are you really keeping those guns for, Second Amendment people? My theory is all of those folks are keeping guns in case the natives and the Negroes get restless. That's my theory. That they're keeping the guns in case, you know what I'm saying, like there's a mass awakening that looks like a violent revolution in the hearts and psyches of people of color, and that they end up, you know, waking up to saying this is stolen from us and we want it back. I believe that that's why they have the Second Amendment, right? It's for the natives and Negroes that gets restless. It ain't really for the government. I don't think you really could win that one. You know what I'm saying? And that's a major thing because it's a powder keg. That's a powder keg in this country because of who we have at the top. They always say, now I haven't heard this term since before President Trump got office, but they said the tone is set at the top, right? And Marianne Williamson talked about the dark psychic force that President Trump exudes into the country. And I think that that's a real thing. You know what I mean? You got a situation whereby he is definitely setting the tone. I said on my Facebook page, by the way, follow me at Theo EJ Wilson at Facebook. But I put a meme on there that was basically a match head giving a speech to a bunch of bombs. And the match head's flame looked a lot like Donald Trump's like actual hair. You see what I'm saying? The underbelly of white supremacy has always been here. And it is my fear that America may end up the way that it began. And that is, it may die like it was birthed, which is in a hail of bullets. There's been a history of mass shootings since the founding of this country. Like, if you look at what the Seneca Indians used to call George Washington, they used to call him Town Destroyer. They called George Washington Town Destroyer because he is responsible for the mass shooting deaths and the mowing down of at least 30 Seneca Native American tribes, right? He either ordered them or carried them out himself, right? So since the beginning, mass shootings, but we just don't call Native American massacres mass shootings. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know about Black Wall Street, what went down in 1921, where Black people were massacred by the hundreds, if not thousands, because of a fake rape claim made against a brother who tripped and fell against a white woman, right? That town was basically wiped off the face of the earth, and they tried to rebuild, but it wasn't the same, right? One of the things that happened in Black Wall Street is that a white World War I veteran, he literally put a machine gun on a hill overlooking the town of Greenwood, Oklahoma, and mowed them down. You know, you see what I'm saying? This is a real thing, man. The privilege of violence. I wrote a poem called POV, Privilege of Violence, but the privilege of violence, you know what I mean, is something that happens when people feel privileged to take violent action. You know what I'm saying? Like, men beat up on women a lot of times because they feel like they can get away. Privilege is the idea that you can get away with something. You know what I'm saying? You don't generally take actions that you don't feel like you can get away with. And I feel like violence is a kind of privilege in this country exacted by those who have privilege, who are in power. What's that, Victor? Let's make a movement. Let's start a revolution. Hey, man, when you talk about that revolution talk, bro, you have to understand, you know what I'm saying? You got to understand one thing. You know, you could show up to the revolution. You have your guns clacked and ready, you know what I mean? But it's a similar situation where if you see a wasp's nest, you swat that wasp's nest because you understand that they have the potential for harm, even though you could hurt the wasp way more than like it could hurt you. It doesn't matter. Just because it has that potential, people use excessive force. The government fights in what's called asymmetrical warfare. They don't make it balanced. This is not a fair fight. You know what I'm saying? Colin Powell talks about that. This is asymmetrical warfare. This is my side got all the guns, your side ain't got the guns, and we gonna wipe y'all out, right? So the talk of revolution is seductive to those who have been downtrodden and beaten up, all right? Just understand that it's a difference between showing up to the revolution and winning the revolution. That's what I would say, Vic. You know what I mean? What's up? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Hey, bruh. That's Gabriel Salas. What's up, Gabe? Yo, check it out, Gabe. I will say this, brother. That's true. I will say that mass stabbings are a lot harder to pull off. You know what I mean? Like, if there were no guns and we had knives, like, for example, the United Kingdom got like knives everywhere. They got stabbings and all kind of stuff, right? That's much more difficult to pull off then a mass stabbing is harder to pull off than like a mass shooting. You see what I'm saying? There is something about the ease and effectiveness and in the fact that guns are precisely deadly most of the time. You know what I mean? If they hit a vital organ versus a knife that you can shoot from far away, that you can inflict maximum damage. You know, the problem with these guns is that these AR-15 rifles, they shoot around at a much higher velocity, and it causes more damage on impact. That's a lot different than somebody stabbing somebody. Somebody said on my page, well, you know what I'm saying? You ban all these assault rifles, but people make bombs. Well, if you think about it, an assault rifle is like a bomb that shoots the shrapnel in one direction. You see what I'm saying? And when you think about it in those terms, it is as deadly as a bomb. It's a reusable bomb, essentially, a bomb that you can actually point the destruction where you want it to go. You see what I mean? Like, and as a black man, the Second Amendment puts me in a precarious situation. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that communities of color have been exploited when they have given up their weapons. Native Americans went through that when they gave up their weapons. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the massacres, like, for example, Wounded Knee, happened when they took all the guns away. And then they mowed everybody down. You feel me? So that's the thing that can actually happen. As a black man, I got to be mindful of that all the time. And so I am in agreement of self-defense. I'm in agreement of keeping guns, man. To protect yourself against other knuckleheads. You know, I'm from the hood, so I've been seeing all kind of shit go down. But I'm not necessarily sure. I think we're in a stalemate here because when Australia had the Port Arthur massacre, they took all the guns, right? But I feel like Australia could trust this government more than we could trust ours. There is a deep distrust from black people, white people, everybody about the American government. They don't believe that if they actually give up their guns, the American government is going to do right. And we have history to back that up. You see what I'm saying? It's a catch-22 because you got guns, you got white supremacy, this ideology that's literally been killing people since the beginning. By the way, in terms of violent white supremacy, I was visiting my brother's house. He went to the lynching museum in Alabama, right? And what my brother said, and you know, what my brother had this book that you get from the lynching museum, and it talked about all of the black people that were hung back in the day. You see what I'm saying? And what was so interesting about this book from the lynching museum is that you got all these pictures of young white people that were happy to be in the photograph saying, we want all white schools. Like, we don't want, you know what I'm saying, integration. Like, you got white people that were happy to pose and showboat about being racist, segregationist. And I just looked and I started wondering, because there was kids in the 50s when these pictures was taken. I was like, whose grandpa are you? You know what I'm saying? Did you become a judge? Did you become a police commissioner? Did you become an elected official? You know what I mean? Like, that undercurrent, that underbelly has been there since then. And the same guy that was pulling off the lynchings back in the day, you know what I mean? The same guy that's pulling off the lynchings back in the day is actually doing the mass shootings nowadays. It's that wounded ego white male, you know what I mean? It's the same cat. What we got? The only person that caused this is Trump. Exactly like I thought a revolution was. Give one, take one thing, show up like to demonstrate, but how the bloodshed last thing you actually want for things to change. Listen, man. First of all, Lisa, I'll see you, Lisa. What's good? So here's the thing that I will say. Trump got to be held responsible. Like, this to me may be the most impeachable thing. Like, the tone that he sets might be the most impeachable thing about him. The fact that he don't have a problem setting the tone that, like, advocates for, like, violence and death against certain minorities, even people who are born here, is a major issue, man. Like he make George W. Bush look like a good president. Think about that shit. Like, he make W look like a good president. That is nuts. You know what I'm saying? So, like, yeah, man. Gabriel, I see you, big brother. So this is the thing about bloodshed. You know what I mean? I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you're from the hood. I'm from the hood. I've seen the fallout of violence. Like, when you live by the sword, or low key, like, you die by the sword. I've seen what happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I've got violent in my lifetime, when I've given into my more base or darker instincts, it's always an unintended consequence. Now, that consequence may be necessary for certain things to grow, because some cats don't get it till they wake up with the evidence and a lump on their face, right? I get that, you know what I mean? But we got to decide, because I tell you, a revolution comes, the union will never be the same. Like it might for real be over. So I see you, Gabe. Hey, what's up since day one? What's up since day one? I see you, love. I think that's a sis. I don't know if you a guy. What's up, bro? All right. So anyway, but like I think that we have to acknowledge that we have a deadly concoction of substances, guns, white supremacy, and the third one we ain't talked about yet, which is psychotropic drugs, which is the opioid medication that's prescribed over the counter. A lot of the mass shootings, I forget where I've seen this documentary, but a lot of the mass shootings, one of the main things they have in common that they don't talk about is the fact that these guys were prescribed drugs that distorted their perception of right, wrong, consequences, repercussions, safety, and unsafety. A lot of these psychotropic drugs actually make people believe that there is actually worse things at hand. You see what I'm saying? And like, for example, the dudes from Columbine happened like my senior year in high school. You feel me? So when Columbine went down, they didn't talk about that. They were definitely white supremacists, same profile that did the lynchings as the ones doing the mass shootings. You know what I'm saying? Violent white guys who think that they can take life. You know what I mean? There have been black shooters, there have been black mass shooters. Most of those guys, in fact, all black mass shooters, the thing they have in common is that they've been military and had PTSD in some real way. I think that's interesting. But uh, hey, what's up, Federico? Thank you, I guess. Yo, but like Peep, the psychotropic drug thing, man, it's a major problem because of the fact that you have a situation where you have all of these drugs, they uncontrolled. You know what I'm saying? And you got all of these guns that's uncontrolled. And you got public spaces that you just can't set up enough metal detectors. You can't frisk everybody. You can't, I mean, literally, we'd have to lock down every park, every mall, every movie theater, every church, synagogue, mosque. Like you can't actually block all of these people. You feel me? So I think that there has to be the one of the fastest things we could pass some common sense. We could pass some common sense legislation. You know what I'm saying? In terms of some for real, like I think a gun license might be like the way to go. You feel me? Like you can't even cop one of these guns unless you got a gun license. That might be the way to go. You know what I mean? But also, like you have to keep in mind that a culture shift is necessary, and people really underestimate the value and the power of actually. Hey, thank you to Boss. Appreciate that, homie. You know what I mean? People forget the value of like changing the internal state, the consciousness, the way that people think. People underestimate this. You feel me? That's a major piece of this because the world that the human being creates happens from the inside out. And we like to call it mental health, you know what I'm saying, when they question the mental health in these mass shootings. But the fact is that like there's a trauma and a spiritual health that is absolutely lacking in America. Absolutely falling apart, absolutely not where it needs to be. And because of that, then it makes these things more appealing. And that's why I'm gonna bring this character in here because she addresses this. I don't think, like, for example, like Marianne Williamson, right? She may not win the office. Marianne Williamson may not win, but at least she's talking about the inner world of human beings. Like at least Marianne Williamson is at least discussing the spiritual element. Like she's getting into the thing that happens inside of people that makes the outside world look a certain way. And I think spiritual politics, it's a new science, all right? But we got to actually start looking at what's happening inside of the people, what's happening inside of individuals, and take the world that's within us as primary, not secondary, but primary. Like this is all spiritual, low key. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's sad that religion has co-opted any talk about spiritual. I'll just say that religion has co-opted any talk about actually spiritually grounded things. But the fact is that this all has to do with what's going on inside of human beings, man. And a great book to read on this. What's up? Do you think some of these shootings also provoked used to be a scare tactic to make us leave guns in Indiana to enslave us more? That's a good question, Gabe. Bro, Gabe, that's a good question, man. I think about that, right? And I said to myself, and I posted a status about this earlier. I was like, yo, Second Amendment people, the goal is for them not to take the guns, right? Like the goal is for them not to take the guns. So stop shooting shit. Stop shooting shit up. And then the motherfuckers won't want to take the guns. Like, we need more responsible gun ownership. And a lot of y'all that like believe in guns, you're shooting shit. Like, fucking quit. Like, chill the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that that's something that we gotta discuss. And yes, America do got a tendency to fascism. I get why people are holding on to the guns, man. Like, we are on land that was stolen from indigenous people because of guns. Keep that. Like, this country already made a race of people almost disappear. You know what I'm saying? Because the Native Americans are actually making a low-key rebound. A lot of people don't know that. But this place was started in genocide. So, of course, like, there's a fear that that kind of violence could be exacted against unarmed populace again. And I see that. You know what I'm saying? I think mass shootings are some fake, some takes the guns away and make people scared. Are some fake? Racer 100. I appreciate you contributing your comment, but I'm from Colorado. I know 3 people in my life who've been affected by mass shootings. My homegirl Vanita was in the theater when they did the Batman shooting. Remember 2012? The dude James Holmes with the orange hair came into the movie theater and shot up everybody trying to see the Dark Knight Rises. My man Spartacus Kazar, he got shot in that, right? My man Craig Scott actually was next to the black dude Elijah Scholes that got killed at Columbine. And my homeboy Austin, who I did the TED Talk with, like I did the TED Talk with Austin. He came up right after me. Austin got shot at Columbine and he just committed suicide off the PTSD. So I can't get with the narrative that these mass shootings is fake, yo. They real, and we got it, and we got to treat them as real. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I gotta say. But either way, this shit got to stop. You know what I mean? I think the second minute is our no matter what. However, we should all unite. I think white, Mexican, and black friends, we still chill more. Yeah. I'll say this. White, Mexican, and black. I got homies of all. You know what I'm saying? I got I got white homies. Of course, I got black homies because that's my family. You know what I'm saying? That's my friends. That's who I came up around. And my Mexican homies. Yo, I just want to say my heart goes out to the people of El Paso. My heart goes out to the people of Dayton. I've been to both places. And as a Coloradan, I know this shit sucks. I know it sucks. You know what I mean? So first and foremost, that's what it is. But to the Second Amendment people, I got to pull your card right now. A lot of y'all, especially the ones who got the white supremacist leanings, I'll mention this man. A lot of y'all need to look this person up. His name was Daniel Shavers. Daniel Shavers was a white man. He was an exterminator. He was at a hotel, and part of his extermination job was he used BB guns, right? Well, somebody just saw him using a BB gun out the window, and they called the police on Daniel Shavers, right? And when the police got there, Daniel Shavers was tortured. He was basically played. The police made him play a fucked up game of Simon Says. It's a white man that they did this to, right? And ultimately, the cop killed Daniel Shavers, right? Now, this was a prime example of the government going tyrannical against a white guy. Against a white guy. Racer, I feel you. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I think about that too. I think about that too. You know what I'm saying? So, Racer 100, no shade, bro. No shade, all right? One love, one love. But like, yeah, Daniel Shavers got killed by the police on body cam. And you know what was interesting? Because this was right after all the Black Lives Matter killings was going on, right? The same people who would be saying this is a tyrannical government, this is an example of like them losing their minds, had already been like conditioned to side with the police because they were siding with the police against black people. So when a white guy got killed by the cops, it was already like, yeah, that fool probably deserved it, right? That guy probably was wrong. He shouldn't have been there. He should have watched himself. That's what you get, right? No. In the case of Daniel Shavers, we watched the government go tyrannical, and I watched the far right and Second Amendment people say absolutely nothing. What you waiting on? It's been tyrannical. And if y'all are not, if you don't have the presence of mind to acknowledge that, then you got to acknowledge why you really keeping these guns. Same reason why you always had these guns. Not against the government, but in case Black and indigenous and Latino and Muslim people exact the same violence that has historically been exacted against them by the hands of people who look like the people who are fighting for these Second Amendment rights. Sadly, you know what I'm saying? I don't take any joy in saying this, but that's what I think it is. Police are some dirty motherfuckers. I can tell you, I used to be one. Wow, it was my first job. They low down and didn't like me because, in their words, I was too nice because I treated people with respect. James was good. You know, the movie, what was that? American Gangster with Denzel Washington. Proved your point, James. Um, what was his name? Russell Crowe's character was too clean for him. And because he had integrity, they thought that they couldn't trust him. You see what I'm saying? So, like, that's a real thing. My father just got pulled over by the man. Look, I just found out today that my dad just got pulled over and harassed by the police, yo. That's my pops. He's 75 years old. You know what I mean? He's tall. He's handsome. He's jet black. That's just my dad. You know what I'm saying? He's 6'3", Jamaican blood, just black. You know what I'm saying? Handsome cat. He's imposing. You know what I mean? And it was just like one of those things. I'm gonna just tell you, for Federico, nah, I'm gonna just be like, I mess with women only, and I got a girlfriend, so nah, I will not be calling. All right, that's what it is. Okay, moving right along. This cop wanted to smoke. That cop went out on the beat that day, hoping to trigger somebody, trigger somebody into like provoking him to use his weapon. And my dad was so zen about it that it didn't go down. But I know the police can be dirty. I got beat up by the police when I was 22 years old. And I used to work in a correctional facility where a lot of the guys around me was former cops. So I get it. I've seen it. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen how they cook the books and change the information to flatter their version and their narrative of events. So that's what I'm just saying, yo. All right, Gabe. That's what's up. Holla back. Yo, so I'm probably not gonna stay on here for too much longer, but I will say, the FBI released a memo in 2008. This was right before Obama got in office, and the FBI said, be on the lookout for infiltration from the far right. And this memo was released to police departments across the country. The FBI's counterterrorism wing said, be on the lookout for infiltration from the far right. You see what I'm saying? And it largely got ignored. I want to ask my white brothers and sisters this. How would you feel if Louis Farrakhan was president? How would you feel if the police that patrolled your neighborhoods was from Black Lives Matter, Nation of Islam, and the Black Panthers? Like, how would you feel? You see what I'm saying? We're living under conditions that if the shoe was on the other foot, it was probably, you probably couldn't endure that. You know what I mean? So this is something that you have to be aware of. Like, we're living under conditions where, we all could walk, Black folks, brown folks could walk out, and there could actually be a police officer that has white supremacist ties. That's our lives. You see what I'm saying? And with the history and the body count that they have, it could be a very, very rough thing for us in our lives. So I just want y'all to know that the bottom line and the thing that makes racism a tragedy, the thing that makes white supremacy a tragedy, the bottom line is that we actually are all human. You know what I'm saying? That's the bottom line. When you sit down at my Thanksgiving, you got people from every branch. I was just hanging with my brother today. His wife is white. I see my little niece. You know what I'm saying? She got the blonde curly hair, and she's just the most adorable little thing. You know what I mean? The tragedy of racism is that we are all human. The tragedy of guns is that they cheapen life to a little. Just this alone could end the whole beautiful life Guns cheapen the shit out of life. You feel what I'm saying? And we got to take a look at what we've invented and see what we can do to rebuild the social bonds. A lot of this is happening because of the absence of social bonds. They say it's a lone gunman. That motherfucker felt isolated for a long time, didn't have close connections. A lot of them felt like they didn't have love in their life and didn't deserve it. You feel me? So these things, these social bonds that are broken down in the country make people feel, or at least when they get the thought, fertilize the thought that I should take violence against a society. You see what I'm saying? So this happens in the absence of strong connections to other human beings that make folks feel grounded, rooted, necessary, and that they belong. And if we don't provide that for people, and if we just start judging success by how much money we have in the bank, then these absent connections will start manifesting even more of this. And you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be a pops one day. I don't even want to have that in the world that my children inherit. You know what I mean? So yeah. It's got to get some land as well. Listen, used to be a motivational speaker. I actually already am. Check me out at theowilson.net. So y'all can holler at me at theowilson.net. My book is The Law of Action on Amazon. So y'all go peep that out. You know what I'm saying? Yo, James, on the order of racism, 10 minorities, get numbers. And yeah, it's happening everywhere so slowly. Yeah. It is, James. Yo, appreciate y'all contributing. I'll be back on here in a matter of a few days so that folks can see that, you know, I'm going to make these live videos a more consistent part of my regimen. But yeah, spread this video out, like, follow, share if you agree, you know what I'm saying, and keep this conversation going. And most of all, y'all, spread love because you never know who need it out here. For real, for real. Spread love all day, every day. You know what I mean? To everybody. The tragedy of racism is that we are human and that it's a horrible waste of human potential. That's what I'll say, man. All right. Holla at y'all, man. I'm Theo E.J. Wilson. Until next time, if you missed the beginning of this video stream, go ahead and watch it again. I'm going to go ahead and post this right now. All right. Peace, peace. Until next time. Go on.